me, I've got Jason Campbell, the serial entrepreneur, master networker, and founder and CEO of Brand B Sports, a sports marketing agency. How's it going, man?
I'm happy to be here, man. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
We had Muse Coffee on the west side of Chicago.
Yeah.
This is my safe haven, my sanctuary. So I'm really happy to be on the podcast.
Man, I love it. Now, this is the dopest coffee studio or coffee shop in the city. So
Absolutely.
I love it.
Hands down.
Yeah. Shouts out to George.
Shout out to George, man.
So let's talk a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship.
Sure.
I'll let you talk about your background and kind of where you're from, but I'm interested to understand why entrepreneurship. Why seek out this risky and exhausting career path?
Yeah, risky, exhausting. Actually, George and I were talking the other day. Like, you got to be a little bit of crazy to hop out here and leave your corporate job and embark on an entrepreneurship journey. I think that one of the things my mother instilled in me early, mistakenly though, as I was getting in trouble in school and having issues with authority, she was like, "You're never going to be able to work for anybody, man. Like, you're gonna have to work for yourself."
Yeah.
And that's called entrepreneurship, and you're gonna have to own your own company because you don't listen. You're smart, you're intelligent, you have personality, you're a go-getter, and this is at like 7, 8 years old. I always had great grades, but I was always that kid in Chicago. At least we used to get check marks for behavior, so I was always doing that. I would always finish my work early and be talking to somebody else. And so that resonated with me, like a lot of things she taught me early. Yeah. And so I went to school. I went to FAMU after graduating from Curie High School on the southwest side of Chicago, and that was just kind of where I really learned the power of my network.
Yeah.
And that's something that I tell people all the time is we always hear about your network determines your net worth, but it's truly a fact, And so I worked in corporate America for several, top consumer companies, Johnson & Johnson, 3M, several pharmaceutical companies, and just really knew that I wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I was running into these ceilings with people who managed me who I knew I was smarter than. And, I was just saying, like, why am I, running into these issues? And so, we started a non-for-profit on the south side of Chicago called Swiss Dreams, which focused on basketball, education, and mentoring. And part of my responsibility was to bring the athletes to come talk to the kids. And so we would start doing that, and I just realized that there was a void in representation for urban and black athletes. They had these high-powered agents and sometimes a PR representative, but nobody really knew how to connect the dots from their community engagement and the things they were doing in the community and really amplify that with like different brands.
Yeah.
So that was my whole idea around Brand B Sports, really fusing my passions, mentoring, advising athletes and young people, and really taking my marketing chops and merging all those things together. And so that's what we did over 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just blossomed into this, global sports marketing agency where we've done business all over the world. Our fingerprints can be found all over the professional sports spectrum, to NASCAR, NHL, NBA, MLB, and now recently golf, working and advising Moby Dillard, who's one of the top amateur golfers in the nation. And so he's a excellent athlete and even better person. So that's kind of the short answer as far as how I started out on my entrepreneurship journey.
That's incredible, man. One of the things that, as I was just hearing you talk, you spoke about your passions for specifically mentorship and advising. Could you just talk me through, in those early days, how did you figure out this Venn diagram to mix all of these things together and what that product was that you were going to market? How did you figure out like this is what's gonna resonate?
Yeah, I think that again, starting in that Swiss Dreams era, like I think I really realized that I have a knack and a passion and an innate ability to motivate others, take their areas of development and turn them into strengths, and really push them in the direction that they want to go into.
Right.
And that's something that I really saw early on. And so I wanted to really, utilize my passions and learn how to monetize them. I think that's one of the things, the bigger things that I took away from one of my favorite professors at FAMU, Dr. Hightower. Still keep in touch with him to this day. He's like an advisor. He really told me, like, learn what your passion is and then learn how to monetize it. And I knew that my passion was leadership development, mentorship, social impact, community engagement. And then I wanted to figure out how to monetize that. And that was right around the time where those NFL athletes were like going broke, overspending their money. I was like, we have to do something about that.
Right.
And so me and my business partners at the time, we created, Brand B. And then 6 months later, really realized that this wasn't quite what the market needed.
Right.
And so we kind of pivoted a lot and went from just, advising athletes on their brand, but really executing sports marketing deals, endorsement deals, and things of that nature. A lot of that was done like behind the scenes at first. So we white labeled for some of the top agencies in the world, just really getting our experience up. And I was okay with being behind the scenes and making money.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's kind of how all those things came together. And I started to see that I was really good at that part of it.
Right.
And as I got older, athletes started to come to me and be like, hey, I need that advisement. I want to do this. How do I execute that? And I want you to do it for me.
Yeah. That's dope. And I love the lesson from your professor, because even as a kid, for me, that's one of the things that made me think entrepreneurs were superheroes, right? They figured out what they love to do and they somehow figure out a way to make a living doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool that you are able to identify kind of these strong drives that you had for mentorship, community building, and not only shaped it into a business, but you talked about networking.
Yes.
Using the assets that you had to execute. And so one of the things that I called you a master networker in the conversations that we had. Talk to me about how you built your network. Was it intentional? Like, were you very thoughtful of, these are the type of people I need in my network? Or did you, just naturally connect with people and all of a sudden realize that you had, this treasure trove of connections?
I think that it stems from my upbringing. Okay. So my mother told me at a very early age, I would keep getting disappointed in my father not coming to pick me up. And she was like, he's not coming, And I communicate with my father. Over the years I have. I mean, I know who he is. I mean, we talk all the time, actually. And then she said, so you're going to have to, this is at a very young age, 6, 7 years old. Yeah. She said, you're going to have to attach yourself and align with people who have the resources and the knowledge and the information that I don't have, and particularly men. You're going to have to align yourself like that. And not only did she tell me that, but she put me in these programs that really poured into
That's awesome.
To young people.
Yeah.
And so I would attach myself sometimes just for a season, or sometimes it was for years. I still keep in touch with Herb Henderson, who's still a mentor to me, and incredibly grateful for his presence over the last 25 years. He gave me my first job at Pizza Hut, and I rocked that out. Yeah. So I think that it was ingrained in me early on. All right, what are your deficits? Okay. I grew up in Englewood on the south side of Chicago, so there were many. All right, now identify people who you come across that can fill in the blanks of those deficits.
Yeah.
You're already smart. You're already articulate. You got a pretty good personality. You're likable. What are the other things that you need to learn? And so that's how I really embarked on that networking journey, if you will, man. And it was a necessity to survival. It wasn't just a situation where, I want to be the best business person. Like, no, like I had to attach myself to somebody like her because I needed a job because my mother had just lost hers.
Yeah.
So while my friends in the neighborhood were, not necessarily aligning with who he is because he wasn't driving, 20-inch rims and sounds and things like that. He was a corporate guy. And I later found out that he went to FAMU when I got in, and I didn't know that at 13. But in order for me not to succumb to the same challenges and pitfalls that my peers were, I had to align myself with somebody like Herb, somebody like Mike Bonds, who was a state attorney, and I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and before survival, not just because I wanted to be this business person, like literally for survival. And so that's kind of what allowed me to be able to create these meaningful relationships and also prove that I was worthy of that investment. That was very important to me, and it's important to me now. I tell people all the time, I don't have an inheritance waiting for me. So really what I have only is my network, my reputation, and my relationships.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's relationships is probably, I think I said this on a podcast before. It's, your integrity and your relationships. Yeah. It's really all you have.
That's really all you have.
That's really all you have.
Sir.
So one thing with the podcast or the Be Helpful podcast is this isn't intended to be inspirational.
Right.
It's intended to have real honest conversations about the entrepreneurial journey, what the experience is, and try to give kind of some tactical advice of like how to do this. So I want to dive a little bit into what you said about attaching yourself to Herb and building these relationships. What was the first conversation like? Were you transparent about like, I need to learn these 3 things from you?
No, I didn't. I wasn't that that tactical and intentional at 13. I met Herb at like 10, 11.
Okay.
He stayed next door to a couple of my best friends, and we would play basketball in the alley. Like I'm an alley kid. We played basketball on crates first before any rims. And so he'd either give us resources. He's actually married to one of my absolute best friends, Matt. He's married to his older sister. Now, Matt and his sister are like 15, 20 years apart. Yeah. And so that was my proximity to him. So I'd go over on the block. We'd be ready to play basketball. And then, Herb would just come out and be like, what y'all doing? We about to go play basketball. And he's like, how them grades? And, I always had good grades. He's like, oh, that's good, man. You going to college? And I knew at an early age, probably 12, 13, my mother was like, you going to college? You going to Howard? And I didn't know what Howard was. So I just adopted that. Like, I would tell adults, I'm going to Howard. Howard could have been in Florida or New Orleans for all I knew. But that's what my mother told me. Shoot, you going to HBC, you going to Howard. And I ended up making a better choice and going to FAMU, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
So no, I wasn't I didn't have that intentionality at 12, 13 years old. I wasn't one of those guys, but I just knew what I didn't know early on. I knew that I needed direction. I had goals that early and that young, but I didn't know how I was going to get there.
Yeah.
And I knew just from talking to Herb and other mentors that, if I attach myself and align myself to this cat, I'm a go places. I knew that when I said I needed a job, and because of this reason, by Monday, I had an interview.
Yeah.
And the interview was just a formality.
Right.
I was already hired because he had already known my pedigree, though.
Right.
I'd known him 4 or 5 years, and he'd seen my grades and, understood, what high schools I was going to and what I was ranked coming out of. And so he's seen that whole transition. So he knew my pedigree was was official even at a young age. So he didn't have a problem vouching for me in that way.
That's awesome.
And so he really looked out and still looks out to this day. So that's kind of how I started that networking pedigree, if you will.
Yeah. So you talked about being from Englewood here in Chicago. I'm curious I'm not a native Chicagoan, right? I moved to Chicago in late 2015 I'm an East Coast asshole.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what are your thoughts around the obstacles or the challenges your upbringing put in front of you compared to maybe someone like me who grew up in, lower middle class in Richmond, Virginia, or, someone whose parents are in the corporate world? Like, how did you kind of go about that? And as you look back on your experience, what were some of the obstacles that kids in your neighborhood face on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I never, like, as weird as this is, I never really compared myself to other folks. I was around, wealthier kids, just kind of from school and internships and things like that.
Yeah.
I remember my internship with the state's attorney's office. A kid had a party out in Palos Heights, and that was the biggest house I had ever seen before in my life. But I think one of the things that's like interesting about those of us who have made it out of Englewood and actually like went to school and worked in corporate environments is like we've had to really survive to get out of that environment. And then once we're out of that environment, now we're going into a space where most of the people around us are middle class or higher.
Yeah.
And so we've got to normalize.
Yeah.
Like we have to pivot from the trauma that helped us survive and like normalize engaging with people and actually socializing with people.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people understand that transition for us. And I literally keep in touch with or have some type of relationship with just about every young person within Englewood that goes off to college and graduates and things of that nature. So that's something that we just kind of, dig in and push through.
Yeah.
But we never really address it. And it does impact us, which is I'm a strong advocate for therapy because we have so much trauma. I mean, if you think about it, two of my closest friends had 2 kids by the time they were, in sophomore year of high school.
Wow.
And then one dropped out at sophomore year of high school and never went back. I think he's got like 6 kids now. Shout out to Debo. But so like just like experiencing that.
Yeah.
Most of my friends were smoking weed and drinking at 12, 13 years old. Just seeing that, it was like, it's kind of crazy. We used to play ball at Ogden Park, which is on the other side of Halstead, and we would get chased back and sometimes shot at on the way back. So it's important to understand people's background and their journey, and particularly with mine, having to go from, because my mother wasn't even at like prom. Like my mother was in a mental hospital during prom.
Oh, wow.
So I had to get ready to go to school like on my own while processing all of that.
Yeah.
And so, and my best friend Carl, his brother Paul Johnson, he's the reason I went to FAMU. Big reason. That's the best decision I ever made was going to FAMU. And so he really was like, "Nah, you got to do this. You good. You got this. Got this." He actually drove me and Carl down to FAM. And so, but it's just really important to understand like having to come from that environment, normalize and figure it out.
Yeah.
And then you're around all these people that have so much. One of my closest friends, at FAMU, his mom was like the vice president of Sony. He told me how much she made. I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. So, but with creating meaningful relationships and being intentional, even before that's what it is, like, you can completely wash away a lot of the grime and the dirt that comes with coming out of those environments. Because Englewood, you know, there's Englewoods in Philly, New York, you know, all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that's important to understand coming out of that environment and figuring out how to normalize in regular society. You know,
Yeah.
something that my peers at FAMU and even in corporate environments didn't have to go through. I remember being at Johnson & Johnson and, you know, one of my cousin's friends getting shot and me having to leave work
Yeah.
to like make sure, you know, he didn't do anything crazy. And I was trying to explain
Explain
that to my manager, and he was just like, "Why would anybody shoot a kid?" And I was just like, I just got to go.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, those are the things that I carried on a day-to-day basis, even in corporate America, and is one of the big reasons why I gave back early on and continue to give back. And I've been able to really help a lot of people, you know, to really get to where they want to go.
That's awesome, man. And so, all right, so I'm trying to tell the story of your journey, and I'm tracking it. So, getting out of Englewood, going to FAMU.
Yep.
One of the things that I'm curious about is, as you look back on your college experience, how did that shape you? Because I know for me, like I say, growing up, you know, lower middle class, Richmond, Virginia, after my freshman year of high school, I moved to South Carolina. I got to see what, you know, the nice things the white people had.
Yeah.
Because back in Richmond, we were all just broke.
Yeah.
You know, we were all different races, but we were all, you know, economically at the same level. So it was a different experience. But when you get to South Carolina, you kind of see, this is different.
Yeah, this is different. Yep.
And I didn't go to a HBCU. I went to the University of Virginia. But even at a PWI, what I learned or what I noticed was I went to school with white kids that never went to school with black kids.
Yeah.
I went to school with black kids that never went to school with white kids.
Yeah.
And then watching that social interaction, I think definitely helped prepare me going into the corporate world and learning how to, okay, I've got to explain this to this person that doesn't have that my background. How do I negotiate this situation? So as you talk about, you know, shedding that trauma, you talk about building these relationships. I'm curious, as you left Englewood and went into the FAMU environment, what was that experience like? And how has that played a role into your professional endeavors?
That's a great question. It changed everything.
Yeah.
It changed everything. It balanced everything out. I remember my boy Nick Taylor, he was across the hall. Shout out to Gibbs Hall at FAMU. And we were going to this formal event.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have a suit. I don't even know how to put one together. And I don't think at the time I knew how to tie a tie. And so, you know, Nick was like, "No, I got you." So I pieced this black suit together with a shirt that I had and a tie and all those different type of things. So like my peers really like, you know, evened all of that out for me. And it wasn't even in ever in a clowning way. It's like, "No, I got you."
Yeah.
But then when it came to like what I brought to the table, authenticity, brotherhood, you know, strong friendship, grounded friendships, just those things are also made it an exchange and made it worthwhile. And so when I was transitioning from thinking I wanted to be an attorney and figuring out that I wanted to be in business, but I could also go to law school with a business degree, you know, it was really time for me to kind of step up all of those areas where I had deficits.
Yeah.
And I just, again, attached myself to classmates and older guys from Chicago and Detroit and everywhere else that knew the game.
Yeah.
Like, this how you need to move. And I listened, and that was something that was vital for me. So those environments, particularly with college, and I was just speaking with some kids at Sin High School on the north side, like creating those relationships. And I don't want to cheapen them by saying your network, but like creating those relationships that I still have to this day, you know, that I can go just about anywhere in the world and tap into that FAMU network or even that HBCU network. Because one of my closest friends, Jason Ingram, he works for TNT. He went to Jackson State. That's unfortunate, but I won't start a war on your podcast. But no, like even that HBCU network, and then that Black educated network too.
Yeah.
Like tapping into that and creating meaningful relationships with people has been a game changer. Yeah. And when you can do that and not make it transactional, and you can add value and serve as a resource to people, and sometimes it's just you checking on them consistently.
Yeah.
That's something that has been a game changer for me as I transitioned from Englewood with nothing and then got to FAMU and created a space where I had everything.
Yeah. I think one of the things you said that is super important, and even when I'm coaching, young adults or young professionals, it's not about being transactional.
No.
It's not about being transactional. It's about being genuine and having a genuine interest in that person. And yes, there may be some exchange of value down the road, but at the end of the day, like if you are walking into a relationship with the mindset of we're going to transact, it's dangerous to me.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It's just, like you said, it cheapens it.
Absolutely. I mean, I said a quote that, information and knowledge is absolutely transferable, but it doesn't have to be transactional. And if you just happen to have a wealth of either of the two, then make sure that you're sharing it with others.
Yeah.
And making that deposit into others' coffers.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of one of my mantras, and that's what I strive and live to be like on a regular basis.
So we've talked about your experience at FAMU and how those connections and that exposure kind of started giving you a new perspective on the world.
Yep.
Right? So I do want to talk about your business experience and through your entrepreneurial endeavors. But I do want to talk about your stint kind of working in the corporate environment.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about kind of going from college, going into the corporate world. What was your mindset, especially given the fact that when you were young, you knew the importance of entrepreneurship? Because for me, for example, I've always known I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always knew that I wanted to get into business. And maybe it's because I'm the youngest of four.
Yep.
Maybe it's because, my Nigerian parents were basically saying you have no room to make mistakes.
Yep.
I was very intentional about, okay, as I go into my career and do goal setting for every single year, I had my own goals and intentions of what I was kind of picking up. The way I think of it is I asked myself, in 10 years, what job do I want to have?
Yeah.
Look at the job description and be like, I got to do this, I got to do this.
Yeah.
So for you, going into the corporate world, kind of what was your mentality? How did you approach it?
So I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but obviously at 22, 23, I didn't know what or how whatsoever. I knew I wanted to do it, and I was confident that I would eventually find it.
Yeah.
I had ventured down. We started Swiss Dreams, so I had ventured down. Like, do I want to be like in the non-for-profit space?
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I was just like, there's not enough money in that space, and I don't ever want anybody who knows me knows that I don't chase the bag. I'm always looking to create more autonomy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference that a lot of people, particularly the younger folks, whether they're entrepreneurs or content creators, they're chasing the bag. But that's not it. Yeah. That's a false horse to put your energy behind. Chase autonomy.
Yeah.
Create autonomy. And so, when I was looking at, okay, do I want to be in the non-for-profit space? And I was like, no, it's just not enough resources and money in that. And it's hard to squeeze a dime out of creating programming for kids or any of that type of stuff. It's very hard.
Right.
So I wanted to look into a career where I would have some flexibility and also learn a little bit more in the areas that I felt like would transcend into my entrepreneurship journey. And so pharmaceutical sales and branding and marketing, working for 3M and Johnson & Johnson and later several other specialty pharmaceutical companies was a space where I was like, okay, I can do this.
Right.
We made great money. We had company cars, company phone, company computer, and did I say company car too? That was an area where I was like, okay, I see there's immense flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wanted. And I was also in college. I started my really at the end of high school. I started my travel, endeavors, like really getting out here and seeing the world.
Yeah. And
outside of FAMU, I would have to say that traveling to 70 countries has been a difference maker for me as well. So from an early corporate perspective, those were careers that I was interested in, sales and marketing, and being able to, have the flexibility to start late, leave early. I mean, my managers didn't want me to do that, but when the work is done, the work was done.
Right.
But that gave me the flexibility to help Josh Mercer start Swiss Dreams. And especially in the summertime, I would leave work early and go, run the mentoring program for the organization and make sure that, different things and support the organization. So that ended up being something that was very valuable to me.
Yeah.
And then what I really learned looking back on it is that it is important to learn on someone else's dime.
That is the realest thing.
Yes. You've got, and I think that's the greatest caveat that anybody, particularly young people that are going to hear this, should walk away with.
Yeah.
Learn on someone else's dime because it's super expensive to learn on your own.
Yeah.
So what that looks like to you, it presents itself in a myriad of different ways. For me, it was the corporate hustle. Learning what I didn't want to do, learning how to respond to emails, learn how to articulate yourself in environments where people are doubting what you're saying to them.
Right.
All those different type of things that you learn in corporate America, and you can speak to that. So that is the key to where I am right now. Yeah. I learned on someone else's dime for a very long time, and then I decided to leave corporate America and embark on my entrepreneurship journey full time.
Yeah.
And I went from making good 6 figures, bro, to not making a lot at all. But I had that autonomy and I had that flexibility. And so it felt like I was making $1 million a year in the beginning.
So I want to key in on that specific point. There's comfort that comes with having that income just flowing in every 2 weeks. You're going to get your bank account's going to be replenished. I remember I called my mom on my first paycheck that had a comma in it. And I was just like, oh, I made it.
They paying me.
So like after years of getting comfortable with that income, and especially well into the 6 figures, that transition had to have been hard. So how did you deal with it?
Well, so one of the things that we didn't talk about is the real estate portfolio that me and my cousin have kind of put together. Okay. So I had really set myself up for that transition pretty well. And even when I didn't know I was doing it, like I sold my Tahoe. I had probably like 2 or 3 cars at the time. I really made sure that my lifestyle was living below my means. My tenants were paying for all of the properties. Yeah. And so I was able to put myself in a situation where the bills are paid for. Now, what do I direct all this ancillary revenue to? And it was to building the business. I realized I didn't need a Tahoe. I didn't need a Challenger or any of the other extra things. And so I developed this mantra and this mindset about like, depreciable assets. Like if we don't have an asset that is paying for that car or that other depreciable asset, then I'm not getting it.
Right.
And so I've been driving used vehicles for probably about 10 years now, and pay them off. And I travel the world, and I put all my resources back into my businesses, back into my community, and back into experiences. And that's the thing that a lot of young folks, but even people our age, don't realize. Like, invest your money in experiences that you're going to remember when you got dementia at 92 years old.
Yeah.
You're going to remember that trip to Morocco. You're going to remember meeting Asante Henna in Ghana. You're going to remember going to the Maldives and the Seychelles Islands. Invest in experiences that can never be erased, not vehicles that age out 2-3 years into owning them.
Yeah.
And that's the difference maker there. But all of those things contributed to my courage and ability to step away from corporate America and take the leap.
Yeah.
And so, but I had set myself up with discipline.
Yeah. That's smart. That's super smart. Because I think that kind of leading with that preparation, I think is important, because we have this mindset of hustle, hustle, hustle. It'll work itself out. But a lot of that hustle is preparation before you even get into the game.
Absolutely.
So no, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm just making sure I'm not holding you too long. So
you're good.
We've gotten to the corporate world. We've prepared to kind of make this transition to, oh my God, I'm taking this stuff off the cliff. I'm not going to have a paycheck anymore.
Yep.
I think my question is going to be, what did Tuesday look like? What did that first Tuesday look like? And I picked Tuesday because it's the most mundane day of the week. What did that look like? What was your, now you have the autonomy. What schedule did you give yourself? How did you now apply your discipline in a different way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was already preparing for that moment.
Yeah.
It had gotten to a point at my last job where I realized that I was way smarter than the people above me, 3-4 layers above me. And I'd spend time with them, and I just realized that these people did not know anything about marketing. And so anything really about their own jobs. They were making decisions that weren't based on what the market was telling them.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm wasting my time here. And although the money's great, I could be putting this time into building my own empire. And so I had already started, working on Brand B, working on J Sleeve, and setting the groundwork for Sneaker Maps prior to leaving. And so my Tuesday was already set. And so when I did it, some people will say it's unprofessional, but I did it in a pretty gangster way. I just walked out of a meeting, told the vice president of the company, like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
And I just left. But so I was already, I sold the vehicles, and I put those resources toward really traveling to places, meeting athletes in their face, and saying, hey, this is what we should be doing. This is how you can grow your brand. This is how you monetize it. Same thing with the NASCAR story I told you earlier. Like, Brandon Thompson, shout out to Brandon Thompson in NASCAR, vice president of D&I. Like, no, I'll be there next week. Like, oh, for real? Like, yeah, I'm serious. I'm not going to take a month. I'm not going to, I got to take a vacation day. Like, I'm out here. I'll be there next week. And I'll have a presentation ready, and we're going to be ready to rock and roll. And so I think once people started to see that, people like Calvin Andrews, like, been a mentor and just overall heaven sent when it comes to like believing in you. But I built a relationship with Calvin Andrews for 7 years before he called me like, yo, let's rock.
Yeah.
So, that's what you talk about with that intentionality and things of that nature. But it was easy transition for me because I already been preparing for the moment.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was ready to rock and roll, ready to execute, and ready to continue to create relationships and show value.
Yeah. So I want to jump into you said you don't know what you're talking about and walked out. That's just the kind of the courage and audacity is incredible.
Yeah.
And so like, where did that come from? Like there's in a lot of these conversations that I've had, we've talked about imposter syndrome, and we've talked about the self-doubt and the self-talk of, do I really know what I'm doing? I don't really know. I'm not feeling confident. Where does your confidence and call it audacity come from? Is that from Englewood?
Man, somebody asked me that. Somebody very close to me at the time asked me that. Like, where does this confidence come from? Like, where does your credibility come from? It comes from failing. It comes from failing and picking myself back up 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And then walking through that door again, but doing something different.
Yeah.
And getting the result and the outcome, you know, that I had set out for. And so that's why when people meet me and they can't even fathom why I'm just so confident.
Yeah.
You know, because on my worst day, one of my worst days, I walked in here and the governor of Illinois was here on my worst day. And I immediately got into, oh, this is how I can add value to the state and what you're passionate about. This is what I do. And by the way, we also worked together. I created a strategy for engaging African Americans for your campaign. You know, oh, this is the pictures. Remember I did that with the Chicago Blackhawks and you were there? Here's the picture. This us.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Who are you again? But that same audacity, man, that happened. My mother instilled that in me early.
Yeah.
Fearless. You know, fearless. Walk in the room, knowing what you want out of the room. I told you that story early on about approaching Elon Musk at All-Star Weekend.
Yeah.
And, you know, I used to have a list of individuals, Rich Paul, Calvin Andrews, when I started out, that I was going to meet. I knew I would meet them because I was intentional about putting myself in spaces where I knew I would interact with them. And to be honest with you, bro, like, it's 85% execution, but about 15% of it is how you finesse and put yourself in spaces.
Yeah.
When I met Calvin, I did not have a pass into the Adidas suite. And this is the Adidas gifting suite. So, you know, they giving their players the new All-Star shoes, the Yeezys, just big bags of stuff. So, you know, me and Sam were not supposed to be there at all. And we just got in. Hey, you know, who you know? Oh, yeah. And so, but that's a part of it. But you got to be there not to get no pictures or anything like that, but to create meaningful relationships. And that's what I did. And I've got 85%. I had to create another list because I've got 85% of the people. I got them in my phone now.
Dude, I love that.
You know?
Yeah.
So where it comes from, initially coming from Englewood. Because, I mean, I talk about growing up in Englewood, but like really thinking back on like what it took to get out of that environment. And my cousin Desmond is here today, and he's a testament to that as well. In grad school, killing it, expanding his media company and media offerings. And, he's a part of that lineage, but like, if I got out of Englewood, I can get in any room.
Yeah.
If I got out of Englewood, I can get in any room.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's something that's a big part of my confidence.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't bother me that you said no. You know? Yeah. I've seen life tell people no. You know what I'm saying? I've seen life.
That's the hardest part.
I've seen life tell
for most
friends no.
Yeah.
It's over with. Jail or coffin. So you don't want to work with me. I'll be back. We'll see each other. I see all these guys that told me no, and a lot of them want to work with us now. Yeah. You know, so that I would think that's where the audacity and the tenacity and the just the courage and the confidence comes from, bro. Like, for real.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So I want to get a little tactical.
Sure.
About you've got this kind of perfect storm brewing, so to say. You've got the experience, you've got the vision, you did the preparation, you have the confidence.
Yep.
You got the pitch down, you know what you need to tell these folks. How did you secure the meeting? Because you're meeting with people who are very hesitant, or there are multiple layers in between, that you and getting that actual meeting.
Yeah.
How did you secure some of those invitations?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, it's just another example of that, and just learning from those experiences of getting the meetings and not getting the business. My partner in crime was a cat that I helped raise. He's doing his own thing now, but Sam Moore, and I just instilled in him. He went to Howard. He's about 12 years younger than me. He's a friend of one of my nephews, but he wanted to be in sports marketing. So I'm like, all right, you intern. And so we would concoct these outlandish goals. Like, yo, we are going to Oregon to meet with Christian French, who plays for University of Oregon. Let's see if we can set up a meeting at Nike.
Yeah.
And we actually got through to somebody at Nike, and he agreed to meet with us. So we flew to Oregon, drive to Beaverton. We meet the guy. We on Nike's campus. It's crazy. Like, we like, yo, this is crazy. We're having a meeting up in Nike. We grab lunch, sit down with the guy, and 30 seconds in, he's like, I'm not the guy you need to meet with.
Yeah.
We like, you serious? It's like, man, y'all need to meet with the big dog, Lynn Merritt. So we like, who is that? He said, y'all don't know who Lynn Merritt is? He's like, he's the most important. In fact, we looked him up, and they said he's the most influential man in basketball in the world. And we like, how we supposed to meet with him? They like, he's in the Jerry Rice building. I think that I got that right, Nico and Lynn, if y'all hear this. He's in the Jerry Rice building at the time. But I don't know how y'all gonna get in there, because it's like 8 security doors, and then it's like security guards and then receptionists. And we from Chicago, bro. We from Chicago. I got out of Englewood, there ain't a door I can't get in. So we go in, we finesse in, boop, boop, boop. Past all of that, we get to the receptionist. Hey, we here to meet with Lynn. Y'all got a meeting? We're meeting with him. We're here to meet with him. Yeah. Do y'all have a meeting? Yes, we're here to meet with him. I ain't lied yet. So they like, all right, let me call up. It's like 1:00. The receptionist like, hey, he has a flight to China at like 5:30, but he said he'll meet with y'all.
Yeah.
We was like, okay. So we sit there for like 4 or 5 hours. They change security guards and receptionists. We go back up. Hey, we supposed to be meeting with Lynn. We got a meeting.
Yeah.
Is he still here? Oh, I think his plane just took off. Then they was like, no, he's still here. So we like, okay, cool. So we wait another 2 hours. They're like, Lynn will see you now. We go up. We know who he is. Know who he done. Everything about him. Thinking with the Santa Clara. I still know this stuff. Everything about him. Birthday. Everything. And we like, all right, we going it over so we're gonna go up here. We got it. Okay, cool. But he might object like this. This is how I prepared. This might be his objection, but we're gonna come like this.
Yeah.
And we talking, and we step off the elevator thinking we just gonna walk to his office. He meets us at the elevator. Like, who are y'all? We like, and mind you, Lynn is 6'7", He's like, who are y'all? So we like, Jason Campbell, Sam Moore, Brand B Sports. I immediately, though, nerves go away. Boom, this is what we here for.
Yeah.
This is what we think we can provide for Nike. This is the benefit to Nike. Yeah. This is how y'all can further monetize that. Work with us. Lynn looks at us like, where y'all from? And we like, Chicago. He like, I knew it. He like, y'all done deboed y'all way up into Nike. And he said, I don't know if I can say this on the podcast, but he says, y'all N-words done Debo'd y'all way up into Nike. So we like, no, we didn't Debo. He's like, I got 8 security guards, 6 security doors, and 2 receptions to keep this. How did y'all get in here?
Yeah.
And we like, man, we weren't gonna be denied. We came all the way from Chicago to meet with you. He's like, oh shit, I gotta tell Nico. I didn't know Nico at the time. Yeah. He come in my office.
Yeah.
He break open some whiskey. He get to pouring us cups. We like, he like, hey Nico, come in here. So he called Nico. Nico's 6'5", the OG. Love Nico. He the best, bro. Like the best. He's the top dog too. He like a VP.
Yeah.
Sports marketing. Brought Kobe from Adidas to Nike.
Got it.
He come in, Lynn like, these N-words done Debo they way up in the Nike, man. How did they get in? So he laughing. So they bring another young cat that had just started. His name Marquise Hall. Marquise is my man. He was a young bull at the time.
Yeah.
And so he's like, y'all got 5 minutes. So we go into our spiel. We drinking scotch with them. We chilling. And he ended up giving us 55 minutes.
I love it.
Mind you, he's got a flight to China. I mean, flying private, but,
yeah.
you know. And so at the end of it, he's like, yeah, we would never do any of that. We don't really care if they mess up their brand. We just drop them. But y'all keep grinding, though. I love it. And he's like, y'all good anytime over here. Open door policy.
Love it.
And I've been up there 5 times. And if he there, if Nico there, we go in and sit there and drink whiskey or scotch that I sent them. When I got back home, I sent each of them a bottle of scotch, $90 a piece, with a handwritten note. And said, I know you said we can't do business. Thank you for your time. If you change your mind, let us rock.
Yeah.
So that's getting the meeting.
Yeah.
And then being told no, but walking away with that confidence, like, yo, I just sat with the most influential man in basketball, and he said I had 5 minutes, so obviously he gave us 50 more. Something of what I was saying was valuable.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes, so I think the lesson there is sometimes even if you don't get the business or the approval, like those are lessons still that you can apply to how you move forward as a business person. And it was invaluable information.
I think there's so many nuggets there beyond just, breaking into Nike. but I think there's so many. Allegedly. No, like the fact that the one thing that I think is so apparent to me is you were prepared to just go.
Absolutely.
And I think back to, I had a conversation with Brittany Williams on one podcast in season 2, and she talked about she would practice in the mirror. She would say she would do her pitch in the mirror, and being able to meet somebody at the elevator and be like, you got 5 minutes?
Yep.
And then them being like, oh, I know I'm not going to do business with you, but I want to know you. And I want to connect you to someone else. Like that is, I think that is so powerful, not just because of it's a fun story, it's a fascinating, cool story. I think it speaks to how your hustle is respected.
Absolutely.
And how when you realize, oh, we're not going to do business together, you had the forethought and the authenticity to just be like, I appreciate you giving me 50 extra minutes. And call me whenever. That is that is why you're that's why you the
to this day
network.
I can text Nico and he responds, and he's the vice president of the Dallas Mavericks right now. So to this day I can text Nico, Marquise, and Lynn, and they respond, and if I need anything, they give it. So that's amazing. But that's about building meaningful relationships. And I've never asked them for a pair of shoes, a picture, none of that. The only thing I've ever asked them for is for somebody else. I introduced Anaya Jones. She's a rock star. She's a junior down at U of I. Introduced her to Marquise and was like, hey, man, I want you to connect with my mentee. Don't worry about it. Give her my number. So I've never asked these people for anything for me.
Yeah.
Because you have to earn the ask, and I have done that. But two, I want to make sure when I ask for something, it's gonna be what exactly I need.
Yeah.
And it ain't gonna be no shoes.
Yeah.
And it ain't gonna be no picture to put on the gram. And it's not gonna be nothing superficial. It's gonna be a ask, and it's gonna be something that I feel like I'm confident they're gonna say yes about.
Yeah. I love it.
Yep.
I love it. All right, so I wanna touch on, before we start transitioning to some of the quick hitter questions, I wanna talk about balance.
Yes.
Because I know that this is a topic that's important to you. We've talked about it a couple times, and in my research, I've seen you comment on it before. Talk to me about how you find balance and what balance looks like for you.
The practice of yoga. Like about 10 years ago, I used to play basketball at the Y, and we'd play like 4 or 5 times a week, and I messed up my back, and so I was out for about 2 weeks. And so I started taking a cycle class just to kind of make up for the cardio I was missing from hooping. And so I remember the day vividly. It was a Monday, and they had canceled the cycle class. So I was kind of hot, and I was like, okay, well, I need to find something to supplement it.
Yeah.
And so I left the class and started to kind of look into the studio where they were starting to kind of set up for yoga. And I remember one of the OGs came and said, man, Jason, you should come to yoga. And I was like, I was still kind of toxic then. I was like, man, I'm from Englewood. I don't do no yoga. Like, what I look like doing yoga? He had on these like yoga tights and things like that. And I was like, man, I ain't doing that. And he was like, okay, man, well, let your back hurt then. And I was like, dang, he got a point. Like, my back is messed up. So I went in and I sat down and started to kind of sit. And Sarah, she's an amazing instructor. She's probably one of the best in the city. She really set the tone for the class, and was talking about manifestation and being intentional and really tapping into your deeper self and things like that. And I knew nothing of what that meant.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes into the practice, I just started to feel high. And just in tune like I had never felt before. And I was like, I have to be tripping, so I'm just keep doing this. I know I can't maintain this. And she was talking about breathing and talking about it being your journey and your practice. And I was just aligning with all of it.
Yeah.
So after class, I just sat there for about 5 minutes, and everybody was kind of leaving. And the OG kind of walked by like I told you, and I was just I ain't even hear him really. I was just sitting there, and she came over and was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not okay." Like I think I found what I've been looking for, and she really just told me like, "Yeah, man, you have to create balance and not seek it." And so that's something that I've added as a mantra to everything I do. Like, you have to create the balance and the peace that you want around you and in your life. It's not about finding balance or finding peace. You have to create it.
Yeah.
And so that's something that has stuck with me over the last 10 years. And I've just made it my duty, almost uncomfortable in some ways, to introduce yoga to everybody. Some of the hoodest cats from the south side of Chicago have done yoga with me. Some of my athletes, professional athletes, as well as just kind of any random person I meet. And I know everybody's like, dude, I just met this cat. He's talking about come to yoga. But usually when they come, they're like, yo, thank you.
Yeah.
I've had people leave in tears because they haven't been able to achieve that balance that they've been searching for, or they've been overwhelmed with trauma or just life or business, and don't know how to create that space where nothing else matters for the next hour. And that's something that I've been able to do. And so one of the positive takeaways from this pandemic is me forcing myself to teach myself, one, how to do yoga on my own. So I started doing yoga on my roof. at the beginning of the pandemic and started posting about it, and athletes was like, yo, man, I'm going through it. This was before the bubble started and everything else. They're like, yo, like how can I get a session? So I was like, yeah, I got it. And then I was like, dang, how do I teach other people? Yeah. So I started to really practice my mantras and realized that I had a whole hour and a half of yoga poses. And it's just been an amazing journey to be able to tap into that as a resource to create the balance that I need, especially where I am in my life, where I've got 4 or 5 businesses. Yeah. And we're scaling, 3 of them, and providing all of this energy to other people. And so how do you recharge? How do you maintain and create the balance? And even I talk about this all the time on LinkedIn, because people get on there and talk about their promotions. They talk about, what they're doing in their day-to-day jobs, but they never talk about the balance. And that's because most of them don't have any.
Right.
And the unfortunate reality of that is there is no business without the balance.
Right.
And so without the balance, then you eventually fail. You eventually burn out.
Right.
So I'm always there to talk about the balance, and now have been able to monetize my yoga passion.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about my passion about mentoring and how I monetize that. And now I've been able to monetize my yoga passion and creating partnerships with Gaiam and teaching yoga to large groups of people and basketball teams and things like that. And that is something that we're going to be expanding on over the next year to create these retreats with these Fortune 100 companies like Forbes and Black Enterprise, these retreats for young entrepreneurs and young business people so that they create healthy balance. And it's not just about yoga, but also about what they put in their body, so eating, and as well as creating healthy habits for themselves overall. Yeah. And that's something that I'm very passionate about and that we are in the beginning stages of executing. And so, that is a great testament to my my need and my want to continuously evolve past what I learned in Englewood. Yeah. And it's been something that's important to how I continue to grow personally, professionally. You talk about furthering. A lot of people aren't comfortable talking about therapy. That is an important piece to how I move on a day-to-day basis, because again, what I understand now and what I started to really understand at 35 was that, how I learned to socialize and survive in Englewood was never addressed. Yeah. And as I get older, that no longer serves me on how to communicate with people, whether it's romantic relationships or professional relationships or social relationships. Right. How do I continue to grow in that space? How do I continue to unlearn the things that I did learn and not realize that those things were not the way you have to move forward, or if you're trying to move forward and build things that are going to be conducive to you being successful. Right. And so I think those are all important elements to add to who you are specifically as an entrepreneur, because, man, there's so many dark days as an entrepreneur where you've got to just pick yourself up and don't nobody care that you just fell clean on your face. Yeah. And that's something that, I told those couple of kids yesterday, rejection is a part of the journey. Self-doubt is a part of the journey. Yeah. But you can't believe those lies that you're telling yourself that you can't move forward or push through the next ceiling or get the next client. And so creating that space where you're able to feel that rejection and learn from it, feel that those issues and those business things that you experience as an entrepreneur, being overwhelmed, being at a deficit financially and energy wise.
Yeah.
How do you create those mechanisms that make you self-motivated, create self-accountability, create consistency, continue to execute, and overall just move forward?
Dude, I love that. That's I'm thinking about so many different ways I could slice all that you just said, because even on my own journey through, navigating the corporate world, navigating personal relationships, romantic relationships, learning how to be a good husband.
Yeah.
Right. And even with my entrepreneurial kind of journey, that we should talk about what happened when you were 11.
Yeah.
And how that's really impacting your approach and your mentality to things. No, I think that's so important, because the self-talk, in almost every episode I've had, we talk about self-talk. We talk about imposter syndrome. We talk about the challenges that you have to overcome, and they're really challenges that you put in front of yourself. So no, that's so impactful, and I'm absolutely going to have to join one of your yoga sessions.
Oh, gotta come through, man.
My doctor's been telling me to do yoga because
gotta come through.
My stress management is not where it needs to be.
For sure.
All right, so I want to wrap up with a couple quick hitters, but if you want to elaborate, feel free.
For sure.
I think the first one that's popped in my mind, and it'll be based off of the fact that you travel to 70 countries. I won't ask you what your favorites were. What were your 3 most impactful countries that you traveled to?
I'd have to say the first one would be Thailand, because that's where I got certified for yoga.
Okay.
And it was a experience that wasn't traditional at all. Like, I had to climb a 2,000 step mountain to this Buddha statue as a part of like the culmination of this training. And once I got there, I thought it would be like this spiritual moment and things like that. And the guide, he was just like, "Welcome. And now it's time for you to climb back down. You made it." I was like, "What?" I was expecting this ceremony and touch my head and give me this. He's like, "No, you made it." And so, but Thailand was just a great experience.
Yeah.
Overall, spiritually. I would have to say, because I'm such a history nerd and buff, Egypt, and then more importantly, going to Sharm el-Sheikh and randomly climbing Moses Mountain, which was interesting because we had to have all Americans, U.S. citizens had to hire a paramilitary guard to go up into the Sinai Peninsula.
Oh, wow.
To climb Moses Mountain. And so we did that with no trainings, like a 9,000 foot mountain. We started at 1 a.m. and basically climbed it in the equivalent of, not even New Balances would have been great. It was like some Under Armour cross trainers. It was crazy. But it was an amazing experience. And we got there at sunrise, and it was just super dope. And then I would have to say Ghana.
Okay.
Ghana was just life-changing. I went with Josh, who started Swiss Dreams, but it was like all these Howard folks, and it was interesting. And one of the things that happened on that trip was really seeing the culture for the first time. Like, a lot of the things that we have in the States that we think are just colloquialisms and just happenings are part of our lineage and our culture. I remember all the ceremonies that we had. The Ghanaians were like 2-3 hours late for, and I'm a stickler for time.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity to meet the Asante Henna, and instead of asking him some deep question, I was like, "Hey man, he took a liking to me, so I felt comfortable asking." I was like, "So are you guys on like CP time? Like, I noticed that y'all like late for everything, like hours late. And he was like, listen, Jason, we don't believe in being on time to things. Well, we believe that the moment arrives to us. And we believe that a moment arrives to us when the universe deems it so. And so we don't believe in being on time to things. Like the moment the ceremonies arrive
Time comes
to
to us, not
comes
the
to
other
us.
way.
And so that was something that I took away that was life-changing. Like these moments, I could be as prepared as I want to be, walking into Nike or linking up with Rich Paul or Calvin Andrews or Jerry Lorenzo, but the moments arrive when the universe deems it so.
Yeah.
And so those would probably be the 3 countries that were the most impactful.
Yeah.
And then like second would probably the second tier would probably be Brazil, Tanzania, because we adopted a school in Tanzania, the Integral Secondary School, and we built them a girls' dorm as well as a cafeteria. So Tanzania will always be very special, and we got attacked by an elephant as well. So we went out to Tanzania to link up with one of my frat brothers, Rashad Coleman, myself, and my cousin Taki Salam. So those would be the special ones.
That's awesome, man. What are 3 books you'd recommend to entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so you mentioned Malcolm Gladwell, which is one of my favorite authors, and he talks about the 10,000 hours. But I think what a lot of people fail to, not what they fail, I mean, your interpretation of things are important. It's at least 10,000 hours.
Yes.
A lot of younger millennials are like, I did my 10,000 hours, so I should be good, right? But I want everybody to take away from that just because you put the work in, don't mean you're entitled to the desired outcome.
Correct. Yeah.
Because you can put the 10,000 hours in, you can network with whoever you want to network with, but that does not mean that you are entitled to that outcome.
Yep.
So be able to deal with the rejection of not achieving that goal, and it builds muscle memory.
Yep.
See, it builds the muscle memory that you're going to need to be able to not achieve your goal and get yourself back up and go do it again.
Yep.
And then do it again. And then do it again. There's a certain level of insanity that comes with being an entrepreneur and being able to think that you can go and create a partnership with Hilton.
Yeah.
But there's a certain level of gratitude for yourself when you actually do it.
Yeah.
So I would say Outliers and The Tipping Point.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that's one. A game changer for me was The 4 Agreements. And then Clarity and Connection by Young Pueblo, which is right here. This is major when it comes to understanding just how you connect with people and going deeper than just networking and romance, but understanding people who you engage with and what drives them, and making sure that you create environments where they're comfortable telling you that they're not okay.
Yeah.
Or what you're doing is making me not okay.
Yeah.
And then you being able to receive that and make the proper adjustments. That's the thing. Most people have conversations and they really are just waiting to talk and not actually listening to how what you're doing is making this person feel. Or you have the want and the quest to be right.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be. I mean, you're a married man, so you know that. But we don't always need to be right. Yeah. We don't always need to be heard. Yeah. Sometimes we just need to listen and adjust.
Yeah.
And so those are, I would say, are the 3 books. But and one honorable mention, y'all gotta read Will Smith's book. Have to. But listen to it on audiobook. Yeah. That's a game changer. It was an amazing experience. I like to read traditional books, but audiobooks are just more conducive to my my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And his audiobook, it has music and all sorts of things. It's dramatic.
Yeah.
Will Smith, absolutely.
Got it. I've downloaded it. I just haven't had a chance to listen to it.
Got to.
All right. If you're going to listen to the podcast in the future, what would be an entrepreneur or a type of entrepreneur you would like to hear their story or their perspective?
Man, I think one of the most underrated artists, visual artists out there is a guy that I have a great deal of respect for. He was actually on my podcast, Global Entry, one of the first 2 or so people that I interviewed. P. Scott. He's got an amazing story, super dope individual. It's definitely somebody you gotta interview. I think Derek Baker, who is a strength and conditioning trainer, but much more than that.
Yeah.
You know, how he impacts the youth and invests in them, and give them that straight talk that they need. He's another amazing person. I think Jonathan Quarles, frat brother of mine, is just a global business leader from Flint. He a Flintstone, went to FAMU. And then I would say, like, if we can get in touch. No, but I know Melissa, but Melissa Mitchell, visual artist, took the art from just canvas to apparel, partnerships with like Spanx and Foot Locker. Like, she's just an amazing energy and amazing soul. And I'm just really about like supporting Black women businesses and things like that. So there are a ton of other Black women, especially even in the city of Chicago, that are pretty dope. Sharice Summers, she manages a bunch of things. So yeah, man.
All right,
absolutely.
Man. I'll ask to get the connection.
For sure.
For sure. Jason, this has been incredible. There's just so much I've learned in this conversation. I think there's a ton that the listeners will learn in this conversation. This is also the first interview that I've done in person.
Yep.
So thank you for the opportunity to kind of try this out and learn it. Thanks, Des, who's off camera, for helping facilitate this. And then also thank you, George, for letting us use Muse Coffee Studio.
Shout out to George.
This was this was incredible, man. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
I love what you're doing, and yeah, man. Let's keep growing our network.
For sure, man.
All right, man.
All right, brother.
I appreciate it.